Hello, welcome to the forum. My name is Dan Goodman, and my partner here is Soo-Jung Hyun. Both of us are students at Harvard University, and on behalf of the Projects Committee at the Institute of Politics, we would like to welcome you all and thank the Forum Office and the Institute of Politics for being supportive and allowing this forum to happen, which took a very long time to put together, and we're really happy that so many people turned out. So with that, I'll turn it over to my co-organizer. Thanks.
Welcome. I see many familiar faces. Thank you all for coming. I'd like to thank a few student groups who helped us, who helped co-sponsor this event. They're the Harvard Radcliffe Undergraduate Council, the Asian American Association, Harvard College Democrats, Radcliffe Union of Students, Democratic Socialists of America, the Anthropology Club, and we had the cooperation of Harvard Radcliffe Amnesty International, and also some off-campus groups, the East Timor Action Network, the Portuguese American, the Portuguese Continental Union, and the Human Rights Program at the Harvard Law School. Thank you all very, very much. And I'll turn you over to Professor Henry Steiner, who will be moderating for us this evening.
Good evening. I'm pleased, as I'm certain the panelists are, to find so many people interested in East Timor. One doesn't know whether to say the case of East Timor, the problem of East Timor, the agony of East Timor. It has been all of those things for a large number of years, featuring importantly in the discourse and writings about international human rights, but very little understood. I compliment those who put this panel and this event together, a chance to clarify what is meant by the problem of East Timor in what is for us a remote and not very well known part of the world, for us who live primarily here. Let me spend my very few moments, we have a long program tonight, just giving you, those of you to whom East Timor is not as identifiable as Framingham or whatever, some bearing in time or space about what our panelists tonight will be talking about. The space puts us into an area between the Malaysian Peninsula and Australia. The island of Timor is located north of Australia and southeast of the Malaysian Peninsula on the more or less eastern fringe of the Indonesian islands. I shall give you a very detailed and perceptive history of that area from the 17th century to the present in about 45 seconds. During the age of colonialism, two powers landed on the island of Timor. We all know about the Dutch. Their sway reached well beyond the island of Timor to most of what later became the independent country of Indonesia. The Portuguese settled on East Timor, the eastern side of the island, with a little bit of the western side of the island too. The Portuguese language figures importantly in Timor history and culture. The religion is largely Catholic. The Portuguese imprint is clearly present. In the post-war period, when Indonesia asserted its independence in 45 and when it was finally granted and acknowledged by all parties involved, including the Netherlands, in 49, the island then became split, with West Timor, what had been a Dutch colony, becoming part of the new Indonesia, with East Timor remaining part of the Portuguese Empire. A decade and a half later, several decades later, in the, I guess a decade and a half, in the mid-60s, with the Portuguese mid-70s, the Portuguese Revolution, internally, the taking of power by the military and the overthrow of the old regime, much of the Portuguese Empire dissolved with great speed. This took place particularly with respect to the major African colonies. Timor was more out of sight than Mozambique or Angola during that period, and a series of political events and formations took place with an expectable spectrum of political opinions and a variety of solutions about the status of East Timor, linked in some way to Portugal, linked in some way to Indonesia, totally independent, and so on. In this posture, with a great deal of ferment that probably our speakers will comment on, perhaps to some extent a bit more, Indonesia invaded the eastern part of the island in 1975, and what was meant to be a rather quick operation to absorb East Timor into the state of Indonesia. That absorption has taken place in the sense that a military occupation has continued on East Timor to the present. It has not taken place in terms of the quelling of resistance or the acknowledgement by the people of East Timor that they wish to be part of the state of Indonesia. Through this period, politics remained complex, fighting went up and down. There were a continuing period of military repression, anguish. The estimates in terms of those killed run at least to 60,000. The estimates of those whose lives were lost due to this occupation run from 100,000 to 200,000 when one takes into account displacement, starvation, and other phenomena accompanying a severe military occupation, repression, and guerrilla resistance. Throughout this period, then, there was more or less a stalemate. The United Nations passed resolutions, the General Assembly, urging Indonesia to leave in the 70s and into the early 80s. It has been relatively quiet until the present. Since that time, the attitudes politically of other countries have varied. One country, Australia, has de jure recognized the absorption of East Timor into Indonesia. The United States and several other countries de facto have accepted this absorption. Okay, so much for this very quick background, which speakers may draw on in their own talks. Before I introduce the speakers, we're going to start with a very brief video display from some CBS shots. So if everything is ready, perhaps we can let that roll.
Confusion around President Bush about quotas, anti-discrimination policies, and a new civil rights bill. New evidence that Americans are worried sick about their families and making ends meet. Also, a CBS News exclusive, photographs of a bloody massacre during a fight for freedom. This is the CBS Evening News. Good evening, Dan Rather reporting. A killing ground in a remote area of the Far East is just beginning to get the world's attention. That is because Western reporters were inside Indonesia when soldiers opened fire on a group of civilians. It happened last week in East Timor, a former Portuguese colony where up to 200,000 people have died from massacres and famine over the last 16 years. Barry Peterson narrates a report.
It all began with a prayer. Catholic Mass for a student killed in a demonstration against the forced rule of Muslim Indonesia. East Timor was seized in 1975 by Indonesian leaders, fearful that the spirit of independence might spread to other Indonesian-ruled islands. America accepted Indonesia's takeover. The United Nations did not. On this day, protesters, including women and children, challenged the military by marching to a nearby cemetery. Suddenly, and without provocation, say Western reporters, the street became a killing field.
The soldiers issued no warning. They simply rounded the corner in formation and opened fire on the crowd, mowing people down with their M16s.
Fleeing into the cemetery offered the only hope of escaping the massacre. These pictures, seen tonight for the first time in America, have sparked outrage in Europe and calls for an investigation by the United Nations. Foreign intervention, say those in East Timor, is our only hope. Indonesia wants to avoid that. It's an internal affair, insisted one military official today. After this day's internal